Hello everyone, this is the third part of Active Directory Certificate Services ADCS exploitation. And this video will look into ESC3 privilege escalation that exploits a certificate template designed to issue enrollment agent certificates. Because those certificates can be reused to request certificate for another user. It's exactly the same concept as ESC2, which we demoed in our last part. If you missed it, go check it out. But here I'll also show you how we can pre-risk if Kerberos authentication using certificates is not enabled, and we'll use LDAP shell to do the pre-risk, which we'll get into a bit later. If you need an overview of how ADCS works in general, you can go back to watch my first video of the series, where I explain it. But here I'll just focus on ESC3 escalation and how to remediate it. Alright, so here's my lab environment. As always, I got my Kali VM, I got my domain controller, and my Active Directory Certificate Services server that hosts ADCS. So here I create a vulnerable template called vulnerable3, and I set certificate request agent EQ on it, and I also gave pparker, which is our user, permissions to enroll, which we'll see how we can enumerate this from Kali Linux just in a minute. So if we go back to our Kali machine, here's the syntax to enumerate vulnerable templates. I will specify find, which is to find all templates vulnerable to see if any of them are vulnerable to any of the ESC exploits. So now just to print out the output and give our username, password, and the main controller's IP. So let's hit enter. And we can see that it is vulnerable to ESC3, and here's why. If we go back to the Certipy wiki, which outlines all the escalation techniques, you can see that exactly as I said, ESC3 vulnerability exploits weakness related to certificate request agents, also known as enrollment agents. Enrollment agent is an account authorized to request certificates on behalf of other users, which is what we're seeing here. So we go back to expected output. We should see that has to be enabled, of course. Enrollment agent needs to be set to true, which if we scroll up is, and extended key usage needs to have certificate request agent, and we have it as well. And third and last check is that our user needs to be able to enroll, which our user does. But just to show you that's a regular user before we continue, I go into my domain controller, and this is my user, Peter Parker, and it's just the main user. For authentication via netexec, just do the whole subnet. We can say just a regular user, doesn't have any special permissions. So yeah, looking back at the prerequisites, it looks like everything checks out and it's vulnerable to ESC3. So now we can continue with the exploitation. So first we just request a certificate using this template. And I just specify request, which is to request the certificate, username, password, domain controller IP, our target, which is gonna be our ADCS server. You can get from here. Our CA name is right here, and then our template name, which we can find right here. And we hit enter. Yes, override. I just already requested a certificate using this template, so I'll just click yes to override it. And here we go, we got a template as Peter Parker. So now we can use the certificate to request certificate on behalf of another user. Because of the certificate request agent capability configured on this template. But there are a few prerequisites before request certificate from another template. Is that template has to meet a couple of requirements, and article talks about right here. So basically, template needs to be able to issue suitable certificates for authentication, for example, cloud authentication, which there are quite a few templates that do that, or has to be smart card logon EKU. It needs to be configured with schema version 1, which we got the user and machine that are always configured with schema version 1. And the user we're trying to impersonate must have an element permissions on the target template, which we're impersonating the main admin in this scenario. It means that user will have an element permissions over almost any template. And here's how we can find suitable certificates. So basically, instead of specifying dash vulnerable, we'll just specify dash find. And this is gonna print all of the templates available. So first call up, we're looking for user. So here we go, user. And going back to the requirements. Needs to support client authentication. User does support client authentication by default. Schema version 1. It is schema version 1, which another check is met. And last one is enrollable principles. Basically, the main user's gonna enroll, the main admin's gonna enroll, and our user is the main admin, which is because it is the main administrator account. So it looks like we're all good to go. Let's impersonate administrator using the user template. So here's my command. This is very similar. Specify user, our target, ADCS server. CA template is gonna be user because remember we need a valid template that meets all those 3 checks. And specify our certificate, P Parker, we just got in our previous step, and we specify the on behalf of, which is gonna be the domain administrator account. So click enter. Yes, alright, it's because I requested it before. And boom, we got an administrator certificate template. So now we can try to get an anti-hash for this user by giving certificate to the domain controller. Start with that. Specify, oops, jump a little bit ahead. Certipy auth, which is gonna authenticate using the certificate. We give our administrator certificate we just got and domain controller IP. So click hit enter. And it did not work. And we get this error. You see error p data type no support. What this means essentially is that this domain environment is not configured to support authentication, Kerberos authentication using certificates, which means we're not able to authenticate using certificates in this case by Kerberos, which is required for this attack. But here's what we can do. We can specify LDAP shell to get an LDAP shell on the domain controller and carry out other types of attacks. So just hit enter and gonna get dropped into LDAP shell as Marvel administrator. So if we type help here real quick, we see we have all these options because we're an LDAP as an administrator user, the main admin, we can do a bunch of things. So first one that sticks out is add user to group. We can add any user to any group on the domain. And we can also set resource-based constraint delegation to carry out RBCD attack. If you don't know what it is, I have a video on this, you can check it out. And we can also change password for the domain administrator or any user, which is very disruptive and I don't recommend doing that. So we'll just go with the first option, which is gonna add user to a group, and we add our user P Parker. Right now has basically no permissions. We'll add this user to the local admins of the domain. Let's try that. Specify add user to group. Specify our user P Parker, and our group is going to be administrators. And says success. Right, let's try to authenticate. We'll just authenticate to the domain controller, since that's where we added the user. It's going to be 132. And boom, we get pwned. How cool is that? So essentially our user pparker is now local admin on the domain. And if we go here, we can double check, open command prompt, check our local admins, and pparker is local admin. So now we can perform DC sync or any types of attacks. What I want, for example, I can just do, oops, type DC sync. I'll just use them packets, sequence them to demo this real quick. So I'll specify and our domain ID. Hope I got this syntax right. There's not. Oh, I need to specify the actual domain. And boom, we got DC sync and dumped the ntds.dit and all the hashes. So yeah, that's kind of the whole attack. And one more thing I want to demo is what you might see in the wild. I'll just exit real quick from here. Thank you. Sometimes templates can be unpublished, and for example, this user template, because the default one, in more secure environments, people might unpublish it, and then you're not able to enroll into this. And I just want to show you the error you might see. So if I go to my ADCS server, and I'm gonna unpublish user template using this command certitl-sec templates minus user. Oops. And this now removed. So users cannot enroll to this template. So if I go back and looking for a different command. Let's go with this one. So if I try to enroll into user template using on behalf of administrator, basically impersonating administrator, I'm gonna get the following error. Cert SRE unsupported cert type. Request certificate template is not supported by the state. If you see this, that basically means that template you're trying to enroll into has been unpublished or has been disabled. And you just need to find another template that meets all these 3 checks that we're seeing right here. I did run into this issue on the Hack the Box machines recently, so I want to bring it up. And now let's go into and see how we can fix it. So yeah, if we open template, our main indicators are all number one is, oops, it's under security, is that Peter Parker, regular user, can enroll into this template, so ideally we want to remove it. And if you need to have the ETU certificate request agent for some reason, for example, for your help desk to enroll into smart card certificates, you want to keep it, but just limit it to that specific group and don't make it, or don't allow enrollment permissions to everyone or low privileged users. And second one, if you for some reason misconfigured it and you didn't mean to have certificate request agent ETU on the template, so you just want to go ahead and remove it. And that's basically it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to look into other ESC privilege escalation methods, for example, ESC1 or ESC2, I highly recommend you go back into this playlist and check those out. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.